What's up, Packer fans? I'm Nariah Chapik, host of Porn on Our Packers podcast. Thank you for being here, and thank you for checking out this video. There's no rest for the wicked. The Packers are on a very short week. Therefore, I am on a very short week. So this video is posting Tuesday morning. Congratulations. Game day is 2 days away. I gotta love the short week, but that always means we have a very long wait until that next game. But we're gonna get through this. We're gonna get amped up. We're gonna get excited for this Thursday night matchup. The Packers are 3-0. We face the Philadelphia Eagles. It is time to pour ourselves another Packers podcast. So there's a lot to talk about and a lot to discuss in this week's video. So real quick, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button. I'll give you 2 seconds and we're all wrapped up. So let's do a quick recap of Sunday's game. So yes, we will be going live tonight, Tuesday night, 9 p.m. Central. I'll mention that a couple more times throughout this video, and we'll do a live discussion, a Q&A. Tune in and chat if you'd like to. But Green Bay goes on to a 27-16 victory, move on to a 3-0 start on this beautiful 2019 season, the Matt LaFleur era, if you will. If the Packers win Thursday night, by the way, so Matt LaFleur will be the first head coach in Green Bay history to start his career 4-0. That is incredible, and I would love to see it happen. I think it's gonna happen, but I would love to see it happen. There are still 8 undefeated teams out there in the NFL. We have the Patriots, the Cowboys, the Bills, the Chiefs. I choke when I get excited about things like this. The Chiefs, the Rams, the 49ers, and yes, even the Lions are an undefeated team with that 2-0-1 record, and that puts them in second place in the NFC North. Now, if you're wondering, if you're thinking to yourself, Nariah, who are the other NFC teams who did they lose to? Well, the answer would be the Green Bay Packers is who they lost to. That's right, the 2 losses in that NFC column, both are the result and came at the hands of the Green Bay Packers. So that is absolutely awesome. Huge for the Green Bay Packers that they had those division wins, and it just shows what it can do to these standings as the season begins to roll on in its lovely groove that it goes down. Notable performances from last week's game against Denver. So the defense had 3 total turnovers, 2 fumbles, 1 stripped by Alexander, which is absolutely beautiful play. That was one of those plays where he caught the pass wide open. You're like, son of a... And he managed to strip it very cleanly. And then Gary, of course, you guys remember Rashawn Gary actually had a roll on Sunday. He had not only a sack, but he had that lovely fumble recovery. That was when I first realized he was actually in the game. Outside of that, Savage, my boy Savage. I got a jersey here. I was throwing jerseys last week. I got this one. Savage comes up with his first career interception, and they didn't even rule it an interception right away. Green Bay had to challenge it. It was obviously an interception. Of course it was an interception. So far, the Packers defense leads the NFL in turnovers or takeaways with a grand total of 8. They have a +6 turnover differential, which also leads the league. And they have the most turnovers through 3 weeks since the 2009 season. So we are off to a great start. Of course, those sacks come from 3 of them came from Preston Smith, 2 sacks from Zadarius Smith, 1 sack for my boy, first overall Packers selection, Rashawn Gary, who filled in. And a really interesting point, that play that Rashawn Gary actually went out there and got a sack. Zadarius Smith went out. I think he got the wind knocked out of him. He was out a couple plays, so Gary fills in at his role on that edge rusher, and sure enough, he fills in lovely and gets a sack on Joe Flacco. For the second straight week, though, the Packers defense has failed and struggled to stop the run. Last week or the week prior, week 2, Cook, who looks like probably one of the best running backs in the league, ran for 154 yards on 20 carries, and he had 1 touchdown. Of course, that 75-yard touchdown that he got. And on Sunday, Lindsey and Freeman combined for 144 yards on 36 rushes, and Lindsey had both scoring touchdowns for that Denver Broncos team. So we'd love to see them clean up that run game. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself for my keys to victory, but I would love to see the Packers clean up that run game. Green Bay did not allow Flacco to throw a single touchdown, which is a remarkable thing. You have a Super Bowl winning quarterback, and yes, their offense might not be, anything close to a top 10 offense in the league, but held Flacco to 213 yards passing, 20 for 29, Did have that one interception, as I mentioned before. And on the other side, talking about offenses, the Packers offense is continuing to find their groove. So Aaron Jones had both of Green Bay's rushing touchdowns. However, it was Williams, Jamal Williams, the dancing boy who gets up after first downs. I would love to see him get one of those touchdown dances in. He had 59 yards, 12 carries, and the workload between both those guys was pretty much split down the middle, 50-50. Jamal Williams with 12 carries and Aaron Jones with 10 carries. We are, quite frankly, we're 3-0. We knew the defense heading into the season, going through OTAs, going through spring training, we knew that the defense would carry this team, and obviously the defense is carrying this team, but how much longer do we need to wait as Packer fans watching these games for that offense to just do its part and blow out these teams? Because quite frankly, if we can get an offense together, which I think all of us are really starting to get pretty giddy about, is the fact that once this offense starts firing all cylinders, these are going to be, 40 points to 16. They're going to be blowouts. The Packers are going to definitely be contenders if they can keep this going. And at times in last week's game, the game just felt closer than it should have felt. I think they got out to a 14-point lead sometime there in the third quarter. My dad said to me, man, finally we can kind of take a breath, a little bit of a breather. But yeah, Green Bay goes on to score in the opening drive, just like they did in week 2 against the Vikings. However, they never found themselves in a flow throughout the entire game. They get through these lulls throughout the game, and at 6 times they found themselves with at least a 3rd and 10 situation, 3rd and longer than 10 situation. So getting ahead of myself again for keys to victory, but they got to clean up that 3rd and 10 situation. For the second straight week, no tight ends. Outside of very early on in the game where he threw a little, shovel or dish pass or, side arm to Mercedes Lewis, Jimmy Graham, who was my starting tight end in fantasy football, has not had a catch in week 2 or week 3. And I'm slowly, it's going to cause some rumbles and possibly, but I'm slowly starting to get on that bandwagon that if we are not going to utilize Jimmy Graham, that maybe we could clear up a little bit of cap space. It could very well be his last season. Let's see how this whole thing pans out. As far as the receiving groups, Adams, also quiet. They just can't seem to get him completely invested in a full game, 100 yards receiving, multiple touchdowns, however you want to look at a successful game for Davante Adams. Afterwards, he did go on to say in his locker room, and I do appreciate this comment, he goes, "We just got to stop the lulls, lock in, and make sure we continue to put our foot on their throats. That's what separates. I look up and see the Patriots. They're 30-0 or 30-0 week after week. I want to get back to doing stuff like that. And I would love, like I had mentioned before, this offense gets flowing on all cylinders, fighting on all cylinders, firing on all cylinders, and they'll look really good. I'm looking forward to it. They're gonna be really good. But that's enough. That's all I have to do. That's all I want to talk about with this Bronco game. Again, we'll dive into it further tonight. If you are tuning in on Tuesday, we will dive into it tonight. I'm going live 9 p.m. Central. We'll talk about last week's game. We can talk about the Eagles game. We can talk about whatever you like. If you need relationship advice, I'm there for you. I got your back. But right now, let's talk about the upcoming Eagles game. So those Philadelphia Eagles come into Lambeau Field sitting at a remarkable 1-2 record. In their week 2 loss on Sunday Night Football to the Atlanta Falcons, I'm not sure how many of you guys caught that game, but the Eagles offense lost both their starting wide receivers. We're talking about Deshaun Jackson and Alshon Jeffrey. And they failed to beat, in my opinion, a very bad, maybe not very bad, but a bad Atlanta Falcons team. They're way overrated. I know because I also have Matt Ryan as my quarterback because Drew Brees went out, but I'm not going to bore you with that. That game against the Falcons, we saw Matt Ryan throw 3 interceptions. He finished the game with a 45.4 quarterback rating, and yet the Eagles still could not pull out a victory on Sunday Night Football in week 2 and beat the Falcons. And then last week, this past week, the Falcons got destroyed or beat, however you want to look at it. Atlanta's not that good. On Sunday, though, the Eagles then fell to the undefeated Detroit Lions. Boy, that's fun to say. That saw the Lions return a 100-yard kickoff return on their very first possession of the game. Philadelphia had a blocked field goal with 1:53 left, and they ran it back all the way down to like the 20-yard line, but there was a penalty called, so they took it at midfield. And the Eagles just could not capitalize in the 2-minute drill, quite frankly, to go ahead and get the lead, take the lead, win the game, defeat the Detroit Lions. They got called for 3 offensive pass interference penalties throughout the game, which is just shocking to me. and the last came on a 4th and 5 with 55 seconds left, and it pretty much wrecked the entire drive. It wrecked the game. Therefore, the Eagles fall to 1-2, and that's just surprising. This is not a team that should be 1-2. The Eagles' top remaining wide receiver, Nelson Aguilar, lost a fumble with 2 minutes left in the first half. He also had a couple drops throughout the game. And then the fill-in receivers, we have Mac Hollins, who was responsible for that offensive pass interference that I had mentioned on that 4th and 5 situation. And then you have rookie Arcega Whiteside. He was just limited to 1 catch and 10 yards. These are guys that I had to look up. I had to do research for this. This is not what I want to do. I want to talk about starting receivers. I want to talk about potential, upsets. I don't want to talk about upsets. Why would I want to talk about upsets? Outside of the wide receiving group being banged up, on Sunday, the Eagles also lost starting tackle Andre Dillard and cornerback Ronald Darby. They left Sunday's game with injuries. And then on Monday's injury report, the Eagles had 10 players that did not practice, and that's got to be a worrisome thing if you are a Philadelphia Eagles fan watching this. I'm sure if you're a Philadelphia Eagles fan watching this, you're going to dislike this video because I always get a handful of you throughout the week that really just brighten up my mood. And the Philadelphia Eagles, they came into the regular season. They were number 5 in the NFL.com power rankings. They now enter Lambeau Field Thursday in a very early must-win situation, because if they get themselves another loss against the Packers, or I should say when they get themselves another loss to the Packers, that will put them 3 games behind the Dallas Cowboys, and we will see those Cowboys 1 week away. Well, 10 days, 2 weeks away. Depends when you're watching this. So this will be the 44th matchup against the Philadelphia Eagles, and Green Bay leads the series 27-16. The Packers have won 5 of the last 6 games against the Eagles, including 2 of the last 3 in Green Bay. Green Bay has won 4 of their last 5 games played on Thursday night. And in those last 4 Thursday night games, Rodgers has thrown for 10 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, with a passer rating of 112. He has a passer rating of 106 that ranks number 4 in all-time history for these Thursday night football games. So this will be, however, the first time that the Eagles and the Packers have played on Thursday night. So we will give the Eagles the benefit of the doubt. 2 memorable moments for me in these Packers and Eagles matchups. I think the one that I get chills thinking about it, but the first one that comes to mind, Green Bay's 21-16 wild card win in January of 2011. Of course, that was the tip of the iceberg that eventually propelled us to Super Bowl 45 and that wonderful victory, our last Super Bowl, but that will change hopefully in the very near future. But yeah, that was that first wild card victory, and then we went on to beat Atlanta. We just destroyed Matt Ryan and the Atlanta Falcons. And then, of course, those Bears. We beat the Bears, too. It's a great year. I love that. If you are an Eagles fan, I will give you a little bit of joy right here, because that infamous 4th and 26 play, yes, back in January of 2004, that saw Donovan McNabb throw a perfect strike to Freddie Mitchell. It was the 4th quarter of the divisional round of the playoffs that year. It set up a 31-yard field goal for David Akers, if you remember that name, to send the game into overtime, and then eventually it resulted in the Eagles kicking a game-winning field goal and eliminating the Packers from the playoffs. So there is some history between these guys. I mean, obviously the Packers-Eagles history is really within the last 20 years or so, at least the games that stand out to me. Maybe that's because I'm younger. I'm not entirely sure. But from a personnel standpoint, 4th-year head coach, of course, of the Philadelphia Eagles, Doug Peterson. He used to be a member of the Packers. He spent 8 seasons as Brett Favre's backup. Eagles assistant tight ends coach Mike Barnum played 4 games for the Packers at tight end in 1995. Their safeties coach Tim Hawk played safety for the Packers for 4 seasons from 91 to 94, appearing in 58 games. And then a little fun fact for you, Matt LaFleur worked with Eagles defensive line coach Philip Daniels in Washington. And Nathaniel Hackett used to work with the Eagles defensive coordinator, Jim Schwartz, out there in Buffalo. And if that name Jim Schwartz sounds familiar to you, it's because he was the Lions head coach from 2009 to 2013. And the Lions, when I think of Jim Schwartz, I do think of a great defense. I think the Detroit Lions if they had anything going for them back then, it was a good defense, a great defense. And I think that's kind of his niche. That's where he really excels. And all the talk about the Eagles is about how frustrating and poor their offense is playing, and they're not really talking a whole lot about how, their defense is just kind of carrying them. Man, that sounds familiar, doesn't it? Offense is struggling, defense is carrying them. I swear I've talked about something like that recently. But overall, I think this is still a really good Eagles team. It's a really angry team, quite frankly. They were not supposed to be 1-2 at this point throughout the season. They had a lot of high expectations, not only within the organization but throughout the entire NFL media. I personally did not see it. I didn't think of the Eagles as being that team that would make a run at the Super Bowl, but I think a lot of the reasoning behind it is because of the injuries that they have suffered on the offensive side of the ball, and they will have their backs against the wall Thursday night. Like I said, this is a very early must-win situation for the Philadelphia Eagles. The Packers, on the other hand, have one of the top defenses in the league, which is just awesome and fun to say, and the offense that still hasn't been able to put a full game together. So we have to do that. Rodgers, LaFleur, anybody on the offense, put a full game together. Please do it. Just do it once and then just kind of stack success. We will be looking to go 4-0, and it will be the first time since 2015, and for only the 5th time we'll be 4-0 in the last 52 years. So, like I said, this is a little bit unexpected. Just the fact that you have a new head coach and you have a new offensive system and things are going as well as they are. We're finding a way to win games. Continued to stack this success, continue to start to get this offense figured out, because we have a very tough challenge against the Dallas Cowboys, and I want nothing more than to go into Jerry World and beat up on those Dallas Cowboys. So what will it take to do that? Well, it is time to discuss our keys to victory. As always, I have 3 keys to victory, and I'm going to keep them short and sweet for this week's video. So key to victory number 1 is shut down the run. If there is one area of weakness the Packers defense have shown, like I mentioned before, it has been stopping the run. Through 3 weeks, Green Bay has given up 393 rushing yards, so just shy of 400 rushing yards on 80 attempts, and that is 4.9 yards per carry. Of the 4 touchdowns that they have given up this season, 3 of them are rushing touchdowns. Dalvin Cook, who is, like I said, arguably one of the best running backs in the league, he had 154 yards on us and 1 touchdown. That's 75 yards scant of a run. And then Philip Lindsay last week had 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, and not only kept the Broncos hanging around longer than they should have, but he helped dominate that time of possession. When they were able, with establishing Lindsay, I want to say Lindsley because we have Corey Lindsley, but Lindsay, by establishing him in that running back situation, they were able to dominate the time of possession, 36 minutes to 24 minutes, but I will have more on that in a minute. I don't know if it's a tackling problem that they have going on in Green Bay. I don't think it is. I don't know if it's just getting out blocked. I think for the most part they are tackling pretty good. I think Kevin King had a rough, first half, quite frankly, against the Broncos, but I think for the most part they're tackling good. I don't think they're getting beat too bad on the blocks, but regardless, they need to clean this up. I do think that if they get another middle linebacker, like perhaps Oren Burks back on the field, that they could start to really tighten up this run game and just have another hard hitter right there in the middle of the field, rather than bringing down another safety and another defensive back. I think that would make a difference. But by shutting down the run, you are forcing to put the ball in Carson Wentz's hands, which he's a good quarterback. I think he could possibly be one of the better quarterbacks that we face this season, but he is struggling with a slew of young receivers, receivers that are lower on the depth chart. And so if we can stop the run, we're essentially giving it up to these guys, these no-name receivers that I had to look up to beat us. And the Packers will then they have one of the best and most dominant pass rushers, rushing forces in the league. So put the ball in Carson Wentz's hand, let Za'Darius and Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary and whoever else wants to get in that backfield just cause problems, because I'm going to be at the game and I would love to see sacks and a whole bunch of turnovers. That would be absolutely incredible. Key to victory number 2 is win that time of possession. So do you guys know the secret to beating Aaron Rodgers? Well, the secret to beating Aaron Rodgers is to not let Aaron Rodgers have the ball. So there's no better way to do that than to control the time of possession, and I think that is going to be crucial in Thursday night's matchup against the Eagles. There are a couple things that go into this whole time of possession. I have it broken down into 2 categories that I think the Packers really need to focus on. So the first, of course, is to establish the run. After Aaron Jones carried the ball or had a career game in week 2, Jones was limited to only 10 carries in week 3. He only had 19 yards. Jamal Williams had a good day with 59 yards in those 12 carries, but combined, the Packers still only rushed for a grand total of 78 yards off of 3.5 yards per carry. They couldn't really get the running game going. There were flashes of it at times, but they just couldn't get it going, quite frankly. The 78 yards rushing that they had against the Broncos was 66 yards less than they had against the Vikings in week 2, and that's a very good Vikings defense that they were able to pull off more running yards against. They have to get the running game going. Quite frankly, they do. You can't just focus on Rodgers in that passing game, although I do want to see that passing game get a much more improved. I want to see less drops. I want to see less throwing the ball away. But get the running game going. That will tick-tock the clock. It'll keep the clock running quite a bit and increase that time of possession. Why am I stuttering over my words right now? The other key to time of possession is to convert on third downs. Now, this has been, if I'm going to point out a nagging problem or a glaring problem within Matt LaFleur's very early offense with the Packers, it's been their problem with converting on these third downs. So Green Bay went 2 for 12 on third downs against the Bears in week 1. They went 4 for 13 against the Vikings, and they finished 8 of 15 against the Broncos, but most of those third down conversions came later on in the game, came out in the fourth quarter, which is when you want to get third down conversions the most. So kudos to you, Green Bay. But at one point throughout the game, they were 1 for 6. They did convert. They went 2 for 7. And it was a little bit of a head-scratching, frustrating moment that they couldn't convert on these third downs. Now, the Packers have done a great job in the last 2 weeks of moving the chains early on in the down. So first and second downs, they're picking up that first down and moving the chains. But when they find themselves in third down situations, they really need to just do a good job, a better job of converting. And that will help also control the time of possession, because picking up, last time I checked, if you pick up a first down, you don't have to punt it. And that is a phenomenal way to hang on to the ball and own the time of possession. So by winning the time of possession battle and getting that key to victory, you eliminate any rhythm the Eagles might find on offense. So if they do finally start to get things moving and going, if the defense finds themselves struggling, which I don't foresee happening, but if they get any sort of rhythm on that Eagles offense, this will break that entire thing up. It's nothing like standing over on the sidelines for 15-20 minutes waiting to go back on the field. You kind of get out of your mojo at that point. You keep the defense fresh on the sidelines, so when they do get on the field, they can obviously go out there and create all sorts of problems. And then you inevitably put more points on the board if you control that time of possession, because logic tells me, and it's not completely accurate, so don't nitpick it apart, but logic tells me the more that you have the ball, more than likely you are moving the ball down the field, getting yourself in at least field goal range, and hopefully Mason Crosby does not miss another field goal on Thursday night, or else we're going to have to get Sam Ficken back from the New York Jets, and that will cost us a very pretty penny. My third and final key to victory is win the turnover battle, and this goes hand in hand with not turning over the ball. Aaron Rodgers has been, well, Aaron Rodgers. He has thrown 0 interceptions through the first 3 weeks, and the offense has only had 2 turnovers this entire season. And yes, it's only been 3 weeks, but they've only had 2 turnovers this season, both of which came against the Vikings, and that allowed the Vikings to claw themselves back from that 21-0 deficit, but just by having the 2 turnovers that they had in that game. It goes without saying, turning over the ball creates huge momentum swings, and you can't give what will be a very hungry Eagles team any competitive edge, and that is going to boil down to making sure that you win the turnover battle. I think Green Bay did an excellent job against the Broncos last Sunday, obviously at winning that turnover battle. And one thing that, if you really dive into last Sunday's game, is that the Broncos hung around that game a lot. They were competitive. I think the weather element that I had not foreseen heading into the game played a huge part in that, and that also probably benefited the Broncos' running game to an extent. But because, we had 3 takeaways, and we still only managed to win the game, not by as many as that I thought not as many points that I thought we would, but you have to win that turnover battle. It's going to be the difference maker. If you win the turnover battle on Thursday night, you keep the home crowd rocking at Lambeau Field, which I will be a part of. It will frustrate the hell and possibly even implode the Philadelphia Eagles, because, like I said, they have their backs against the wall. They're not supposed to be a 1-2 team. They're sure as shit ain't supposed to be a 1-3 team. So if you can create turnovers and get them yelling at each other on the sidelines or looking frustrated, anything like that, that will be a beautiful sight for me. And if you win the turnover battle, Green Bay, you will be 4-0 heading down to Dallas, and that could potentially be a battle of the unbeatens at that point of the season. So it's time for game predictions. Are you ready? So I'm not going to drag this one out a whole lot. I do believe the Packers will find themselves moving to that 4-0 on the season. I have the Packers winning 27-17. And there's a couple reasons why I picked this score. So the Packers defense has yet to allow 20 points this year, which I think they will do again. I think they will hold the Philadelphia Eagles under 20 points. And the Packers offense has yet to surpass 30 points this season, and I think the Packers offense will do that again. I don't think they could get over 30 points. I would love to see them get over 30 points, but I think coming off of a short week, there's not a whole lot of preparation, game planning, changes to your offense that you can really do. Rodgers was saying in his interview that they have a lot of plays that they had prepared for throughout preseason, that they prepared for in week 1 and week 2 that they did not get to, so they might dive into some of those as they prepare for this Eagles team. But I don't really see this Packers offense quite yet clicking on all cylinders. I would be happily surprised if that is the case, but I do think that is coming around the corner, and I think there's no better team to unleash upon than the Dallas Cowboys. Quite frankly, the Eagles are at a huge disadvantage. So not only are they suffering injuries to the offense, to the defense, across the board, it's a beat up team, but then they also have to travel on a very short week. And they don't have any time themselves. They essentially lose a day because of travel for any sort of practice, preparation, mental or physical, to get ready for the game. Green Bay comes into the game Thursday night healthy, energized, riding a wave of momentum and belief. There's a lot of that going on in Green Bay right now. They have the home field advantage. I do believe the Packers, once again, take care of business, go to 4-0, and like I said, it will set up a battle in week 5 against the Dallas Cowboys. So that does it. That concludes this week's video. Thanks again for watching. I will be live tonight, Tuesday, September 24th at 9 p.m. Central. So tune in, subscribe, hit the bell, be a part of the conversation. I'm trying something a little bit different. I think it should go better on Tuesday nights. And we'll talk about last week's game. We can talk about this week's game. It'll be a lot of fun. If I don't see you, enjoy the game Thursday night. I will not post a video on Friday. I will see you guys the following week. And as always, go Pack Go, and I will see you on the internet. Thanks for watching.